would you recommend for somebody who's just beginning their practice, who wants to tap into the power of their ancestors, but is afraid of maybe some trauma that might be present? Could you maybe share a process or a practice or something?
Absolutely, yeah. So one first step, I think, that can be really helpful is just setting aside a little place in your house, in your space, for work with your ancestors. And for some people, that's a lot. That's to even just think about doing that. So if not, that's not a necessity to do the next steps I'll tell you. But that, for me, that's a really helpful first step, just because it provides a place to engage with your people that's not just your body and your life. It can be a little overwhelming when we're first starting to engage, to just suddenly get all these messages flowing in our body and in our head, and then just these events happening that seem like they're synchronous with what we're doing with our ancestors. And I find the more that we have a cleared out space for ancestry, it could be so small. It could be a little Altoid tin. You put some, images that feel like ancestry to you in. It could be a little handkerchief you put in a little shelf somewhere with a glass of water and a candle. But just having some space delineated for them allows them to know, okay, when I'm here, I'm engaging and I'm talking with you, and I commit to showing up here semi-regularly. And when I'm not here, I'm creating my own space and my own boundary. So it's not that we can't connect with them when we're away from the shrine, but it starts to make that flow a little less intense. Because the ancestors are going to use as little energy as possible to get their messages across to you. So the more we create a space to connect with them, the less intensity they have to use to connect with us. So that's just a first step, is the creating a shrine. And I guess the basic thing I'll say is, don't feel like you have to follow the things you might read online of like, you must use a white tablecloth and you must have a cross. Like, there's a million different traditions of how to engage their ancestors all over the world. What I say is, put some items together that make your heart sing, that make you feel connected to the love of your people in some way. For me, that meant throwing away the white altar cloth I've been using for a long time and getting a super colorful polka dot cloth that more felt like my people and their celebratory energy that they were showing me. And making a really colorful mask of my ancestors. So there's a lot of different wiggle room for what you can put on that altar. What I would suggest at first, if you are worried about unresolved ancestors and trauma, is don't put any pictures on your altar right off the bat. Start out with just maybe a tablecloth or some kind of little cloth to delineate the space, a candle, which is like a source of energy or light, and then a glass of water that you refresh occasionally. And just that simple setup at the beginning allows you to then start calling out to those luminous ones, those ones whose names you might not know yet, just reaching way back. And there's a prayer that comes from the Last Mass community that I use really regularly at my altar. And so I offer this for anyone else who wants to use it. It's a prayer freely offered by our community. So, and the prayer is, Ancestor helping spirits, I ask that all that is good come to me, so I'm supported in my own goodness. I ask that all that is true come to me, so I feel my truth and have the courage to live it. I ask that all that is beautiful come to me, so I have the power to create beauty in the world. And I ask that all that is wise come to me, so I gain from the wisdom of those who have gone before me. And then just taking a moment to listen and open to the flow of those wise ones that are behind the ones that maybe are a little unresolved or have some traumatic issues or problematic patterns. Just reaching back for that essence energy of your people and that love, and letting that move into you. And one of the reasons why that's such an important first step in this work is because the ancestors have access to our blood. Unlike, not to scare anyone, but unlike many helping spirits who you would never give blood as an offering to, for most helping spirits in most traditions, because you don't want them to have that level of access to you. But with ancestors, they're already in your blood. So we're kind of already at the mercy of some of these unresolved patterns just flowing through us and coming in our life. But the more that we begin to connect to the well ones, the more they can create a boundary for us between the unwell ones and us. So what we do when we make offerings at that shrine, when we pray to those well ones, is we can also visualize those well ones. Even if we can't really see them, just visualizing them as a boundary, this field of light that's protecting us from the unwell ancestors and helping us to claim our own space in that sea of the dead. And then we can start to choose consciously if there are some ancestors we sense are in a good place and are ready to be put on that altar, but not rushing into that right away and then wondering why things start to go sideways and haywire, which is sometimes in my experience in the past and sometimes some of my clients' experience in the past. Now, as you engage in that process, for some people, you might find that you do need support. So, for example, how I support clients is I work in Daniel Ford's lineage repair technique, helping them really look at their 4 lineages and get a sense of them and then heal them on a lineage level. I also work in techniques of shamanic healing that have to do with me going in on the client's behalf, finding the root of the unresolved dead person that's causing problems and causing patterns that then snowball down the lines and get worse with each generation. And I help that person to move on and resolve and reconcile their life. And then I pull up the unresolved pattern out of the ancestral lineage and explain it to the client so they can then begin to move and shift that pattern in their own life, the ways that they embody it that aren't rooted in the dead, now that the root of it has been taken away and cleared, which is like taking a big weight off of you, so you actually have space and energy to make those shifts in your own life.
Well, looking at the clock here, we're almost at the end of our time together, but this has been such a great conversation, so action-packed. I want to make sure there isn't anything that we've left out. Was there anything that you want to make sure that we surface before we go?
The only other thing I'd add is that one very simple ritual prescription I can give is to try, if you just want to start this process off, you want to spark this process and call on the elements to help you to do that, is the process of making a life arrow and a death arrow. And this is something I learned from Tom Pinkson in the Huichol tradition. But what you can do is you can just take yarn and start listing out some of the qualities of your people that you know are burdens, that you're ready to release, that you no longer wish to carry forward. And take a piece of yarn for each one and put it on the arrow. And then you can make a separate arrow, and this is your life arrow. And think of those qualities that are the medicine of your people, their affinities, their gifts, their skills, and take a piece of thread for each of those qualities and put it on the arrow. Just be like a sharp stick with feathers on the end when I say arrow. It's have to be like an actual arrow. And then create a fire and ask fire to be present with you and burn that death arrow and really let those patterns start to move in your life. And it's good if you do this to have some kind of stable focal point like a shrine that you're already in motion, so it can hold a container for the work. And then put that life arrow on your ancestral shrine. And when you call out to those well ancestors, just start calling out to them and asking for them to support you in embodying those medicines, those skills, those qualities or people that you really admire and appreciate. You can even use them as I am phrases, like a mantra, like I am open-hearted, I am, skilled at speaking, whatever you want to include on that arrow. And just keeping that symbol on your altar will start to let your ancestors know, hey, I want you to help me manifest this in my life right now.
All right. Wow. Well, thank you for that suggestion. And thank you so much, Langston, for joining us today. This has really been a fascinating conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lisa.